Okay, are we ready to start? How many, how many here know the history of this congregation? How many here know when it started, who started it, and why? You know, most of us here, I think me and Kent know a lot more, but most of us don't know just maybe the vagabonds traveling around and here. Back in 2016, everybody remembers Carolyn White. She was one of the original members. And she wrote up the history of this congregation. I didn't even know I had it, and I was going through some old stuff that I had and getting rid of business meetings for 2014 and, things like that. So I found it, had Bonnie laminate it, and I want to share it with you to start off. It says this time was around 1955, the Washington Pike Church of Christ. That's what originally was called, Washington Pike. Rufus Shorty Spurgeons, my neighbor, came to my door and told me that they were going to start a congregation of the Church of Christ in an empty church building on Washington Pike. It was an old frame building without a bathroom or heat except for an old wood stove and a path to the outhouse. How many remember the path to the outhouse? Yeah. It was owned by Betsy Shipe Kitchen, who also had a grocery store on the corner of Alice Bell and Washington Pike. She told the men that they could use it if they would keep up the insurance on it, which they agreed to do. We met there at 3 p.m. for a while on Sunday afternoons. So when they first started, they met at 3 o'clock in the evenings. The first preacher was Bro Pemberton. He and his wife and several other members from South Knoxville came in the afternoon until we got a preacher. I believe the ones who came were from Tipton Station or a small congregation called Nelson's Chapel Church of Christ. Besides preaching, Bro Pemberton would draw his sermons on a flat bed sheet, which would roll up like a window shade. These charts were common at that time, and he and his wife were elderly, very active in the church. James Matthews was the next preacher, and he didn't stay very long. Hal Rowland came next. His wife June and some of his children still attend some congregations in West Knoxville. Hal died a few years ago. Jim and Laura Walden came next in the early 60s. They stayed with their 3 boys until went in 1967 to Pakistan in a mission field. Before they left, property was bought on Alt Road to build a church building. It was finished before they left, and Jim began a preacher training school while there. It later became the East Tennessee School of Preaching and Mission at Carnes Church. This congregation actually started the School of Preaching, and it went to Carnes. Other members of Wooddale who worshiped at the old Washington Pike building were Minnie Freeman, the Parodies, Richard Murray and children, Shirley and Denny Woods. In 1966, Wayne Newcomb and Denny Woods were the first wedding held in the new Alt Road building. I didn't know that. Later, they followed Jim and Laura Walden to the mission field in Pakistan. A few members who worshiped at Washington Pike that I can remember, I will mention by their last names, and there were others: Pemberton, Travis, Hutchison, Michelson, Walden, Williams, Johnson, Pimpkin, Spurgeon, Freeman, Taylor, James, Woods, Dozer, Woodsley, and McGee, Gibbs, and Rowland. The names of the men who preached at the Alt Road congregation were Bros Jim Walden, Bob Maddox, Jerry Davison, Art Gibbs, Doyle Cankern. This one I don't know. The next name, I have no idea who it is. Some guy named Phil Adams Jr. or Phil Adams, Sr., I'm sorry, Phil Adams Sr. You know who that is? Have you heard of him a time or two? B.J. Clark, Jim Farr, and then Bill Bryant. This congregation has a long history. And if I was to say it's all been ups, I'd be lying, because it's been ups and downs. But we've always come through the problems we've had. This is some things going through my stuff, because Donnie called me Friday, and I didn't really get an opportunity to do a lot of prep, but I've done some. This is a thing by Mike Riley. It says, how many people does it take to do the work of the church? How many members of the congregation need to be involved in order to share in the success of a local congregation? It takes every elder to mediate and pray as they guide, protect, and provide spiritual nourishment to every member of the local flock. We read that in Acts 6:4, the New King James, and then Acts 20:28, New King James. It takes every deacon to serve under the direction of the elders as he's been appointed in the church. They are the right hand of the eldership in both physical and spiritual work of the church. Deacons are workers. Elders are overseers and give the deacons what needs to be done. It takes every preacher to stand for the truth and preach without favor or compromise. Okay. They will promote the way of the cross, planting the seed of God's word and trusting that God will give the increase in the true and honest heart. It takes every teacher of the Bible to remember that they have a tremendous responsibility in shaping and molding the lives of the students. They will not only take heed to themselves, but to be an example to others. It takes every man and woman to use their talents, serving as they are able, as they provide for their children, as they emphasize spiritual knowledge, showing them that the church and salvation is an important aspect of the balance of life. It takes every young person to fortify themselves against the peer pressure of the world by growing in the grace and knowledge of the Lord and being confident in their faith in Christ, no matter what anyone says. It takes every member to be a good example of godliness and love so other members may be taught and converted into the truth of God's Son. The borders of the kingdom will increase because of their concern for lost souls. How many members does it take to do the work of the church? It takes as many members as the congregation has. I mean, each and every one of us need to work. And you hear the example of the one-talent man in the Bible. He hid his talents. It didn't increase. The main thing we don't need to do is hide our talents. We need to use all of our abilities that we have. There is others. If anybody wants to see it, there's got a copy of it. Did Alexander start the Church of Christ? From what I understand, the only thing that he really started was Bethany College in Bethany, West Virginia. The ones that say that, well, he started the church, it started in the 40s, things like that, there's a problem with that. There's a photograph of a signed commemorating a Church of Christ in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. The local group met in 1710. Now, Alexander did start the Church of Christ. He was kind of young at this time. So that does not, being called a Campbellite does not register. I mean, there's facts and everything. The thing, next quarter I want to teach on is evangelism. Evangelism is something we all need to do, and it's something that we don't need when we hire a full-time minister. It's not his job to go out and do the evangelizing for the congregation. It's his job to teach us and give us the knowledge of how and support how we are to go out and do evangelism and what we need to do. Now, I listen to GBN a lot, and on Ask GBN there was a question that somebody had sent in, and this has got to be a class where we could talk about it. The question was, is there any time that a Christian who is evangelizing or talking to somebody that has a bad habit of cussing, continues cussing, is there any time that that person should go down to their level and cuss also when you're trying to teach them? Do you get down on their level or do you continue up on it? What answers? I know you got an answer, Mr. Adams. Yeah, right. But no, there's never a time that we get down on anybody's level. We present the truth. We do it. When you talk to somebody, you have to do it in a way that is more or less equal to them, to their understanding. I mean, you can't be talking to somebody on this level and they're on this level. You have to be on a level, but as far as going and getting on the level of using foul language and stuff like that, no. Now, the answer this guy got from a preacher was, yes, it's called mirroring. And Blackwell and all of them just shot it off pieces. Go ahead. Yeah, I had one in the truck not long ago, and it took me about an hour and a half to get him to understand I didn't want to hear it, and finally I did. About the quietest trip I've had in a long time. But no, we're never going to get down on our level, and just like that may be some counseling you do, as far as when you're talking to somebody about the Bible, you don't get down on their level and start using foul language. Go ahead. Yeah. And that's, if that's all they got, something was wrong. Don't you agree? I mean, they should have got more than that out of the service. And what was the price on the bread? Anyway, we understand that when we evangelize, we are to be polite, be understanding. Don't get completely down on their level to start using language like we shouldn't be using. But we also understand that they may not know no better. It may be the way they was raised, and it's going to take you a long time to get them to understand. I've heard a lot of people say there's only one real cuss word. That may be true, but I don't want to hear the rest of them. Go ahead. Yep. Well, there's one thing about it, you never give up. never ever give up on a person. It may be 10 years from now, it may be 20 years from now. Yeah, and you know, the greatest thing about the church is you can be forgiven. God will forgive you your sins. You quit drinking or quit whatever you're doing and ask for forgiveness. Go ahead, Larry. That's right. Yeah. Mr. Adams. Remember that. Yeah, we know. No. Yeah. That's right. But, you know, go ahead. Well, I kind of figure that somewhere in my life I've got sin because I know there wasn't but one perfect. And of course, I'm not asking my wife because I'd find out where all of them was at. But, you know, one here and there is good. You know, if I ask forgiveness for one here and there, I think I'm doing good, but not for her. Anyway, we know that when we talk to people, like Phil said, it started out just him and this other guy. And I know Mr. Adams, and I know, guarantee if he didn't have his hearing aids in, it's heard on West Knoxville. but I know that he stands for what he believes. And when he showed the guy that he believed what he was and was sure about it, then the guy started listening and he created a friend. Very simple. They showed respect for each other, but still, you're getting to talk to this man about the church, right? So that is a plus. At least you got the door open. That is one of the biggest problems you hear. Ben?
So at CYC,
that House to House, Heart to Heart is one of the best pamphlets I've seen. I know there's a guy in South Knoxville that don't like them because when he got one, he kind of called Bill up and gave him an earful. Wasn't a nice ear neither. But yeah, there's tracks over here in the library that are just sitting there. You go into a lot of places I go into, truck stops and stuff, you'll see a pamphlet laying there in the bathroom. You'll see a card laying here or there. You'll see a card laying on a shelf in the grocery store or something. The only trouble is, none of them never say Church of Christ. And I'm just as guilty of it as anybody, because I go into these truck stops and stuff every day. I could leave the stuff. And that's something I need to start doing. I'm glad you pointed that out, because it made me realize something I need to do. But yeah, it's something we need to do. There's another thing, there's boards everywhere you go with cards on it, business cards. You never see one with Church of Christ on there. Why? You know, there's a song, "Let Your Light Shine, Don't Hide It Under under a Bucket. It's a little light of mine." When we don't do stuff like that, are we hiding our light under a bucket? You know, it's something we don't need to be is ashamed of our Lord. We need to be proud that He actually come to this earth and gave His life for us, because that was something that He didn't really have to do. Another thing you hear a lot of is, well, you know, you claim there's three in one, Godhead. And sometimes when you try to explain it to people, they don't want to listen. They won't go on, you know, well, you're wrong. You're wrong. You know, it can't be three in one. No way. Can't be three in one. Well, you take an egg, the inside of it's the embryo, the outside's a shell, and when it's hatched, it becomes a chicken. Is that not three in one? So yeah, they can be. Yes, they can be three in one. That proves, that just gives you some source. But yeah, I never thought about that. And somebody was telling me, a teacher taught her class that, her young class was talking about it, how she explained the Godhead and the three in one. And I thought about it and I said, you know, that makes a pretty good example. But now if y'all gonna let me talk, we're gonna have a long time. Go ahead. Yeah. I hadn't either. I mean, yeah, either that or they don't want to look at it and they go in the side door. Yeah, that's the truth. I mean, there's people here that don't know about what we stand for, don't, you know, in the community. And if you look around this community we live in, is building up. So evangelism is something that we really need to take to heart. We need to start working. And yeah, I was told, someone told me one time, said, "Yeah, I really don't think door knocking does any good." And you don't knock on doors and you never see hardly anybody there. As long as you're trying, it does good. How long, I can't remember, how long have we been doing nursing home at Jefferson City? I know Mom was in there 10 years, and we done it before she went in there. She's been dead probably 4 or 5. Well, about 20 years. Do you know how many people has come forward or anything? 0. Do you know what made it all worthwhile? When one of them passed away, their family come up to us and asked us if we'd do the funeral. That is giving them an approach. Mr. Adams. I feel lonesome, I couldn't say it. Yep. Yeah. He tried to give you a bunch of them. But that's true. You're just no. We could. Well, with you, I know. Believe me. No, Phil. I have to admit, Phil Adams and his family was one of the first families when Bonnie and I moved to Tennessee that greeted us. Adams and the Peyotes, the first two families that greeted us when we came to Out Road at that time. At that time, I worked the mines on the weekends, and Bonnie was the one who attended church. She came in one Sunday evening. She said, "You know, I found where I want to go to church. I found a loving family, and that's where I want to go." And from that point on, I think in '87 we've been here. You know, and then probably will always be. If we do evangelism, we need to recognize that there are souls that are lost. Be willing to make a lasting commitment. That's like we talked about. Never give up. If you're going to commit to trying to teach somebody, then you need to continue. And we need to show that we truly believe that the gospel is good news. If you go into something and you're like, you know, then they're not going to pay attention. But if you go in and you are authoritative with what you say, not in an unkind way, but you say it in a way that they could understand it. And you do it with love in your heart. Yes, sir. There's probably 5 marks of things that we need to understand. And when we evangelize, we need to understand we have authentic insight. We need to demonstrate that we know what we're talking about with insight. We need to have an impact on that person. In other words, we don't need to turn back when we do one class with them or one lesson with them. We don't turn around and shun them. We treat them with love and we continue to work with them. You never give up. A good friend of mine, he had cancer, like me, and he had went for radiation and chemo, and it went away. 6 months later, it come back worse than it was. We sat down, we talked at work and everything, and my main statement to him was, never give up. And when I went through chemo, I had a hat with a black American flag on it. That flag means never give up, never surrender. I took that hat and gave it to him. And to emphasize, never give up. That's the way we need to be when we evangelize. We never give up on the people we're talking to. Excuse me. We need to, again, we need to be loving, we need to be kind, we need to be truthful, and we need to be knowledgeable about what we do. Go ahead. Right. Yeah. 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 Well, that's a compliment. Yeah. That's the way we have to be, and being called a preacher is not discouraging, it's a compliment. Yeah. Yeah, we've got a flyer back there hanging on the board about it too, about the meeting. And everybody needs to support it. We need to support it. There is like I said, next quarter we'll be doing a class, and we're going to do it's going to be basically evangelism. But what I want to do, and people may not want to do it, but Apocalyptic Press, I've ordered what they would call workbooks, that you would have Bible study with somebody. Each one's on a different topic, and there's 10 of them. And what I want to do is go through each one of those one at a time and let's all understand what we're talking about and what we're teaching, and what we're teaching to people. So, unless there's a lot of resentment, a lot of kickback on it, that's what I'd like to do and use the tracks. So, that is Mr. Adams. Yeah. No. Yes, we do. We have a lot that have their own opinion about stuff, about things, and they're never going to change. They're not going to change. They have their own opinion. They're always right. You're wrong, or whatever. Or you're misinterpreting this, and this is how it's interpreted. And you have people that don't listen, that don't want to sit there and talk to you and listen to you, and you talk to them and have a conversation, just like Phil. Go ahead, Mr. Adams. We'll go to a restaurant every once in a while, and Jackson, my grandson, will go with us. And we'll be sitting there ready to eat. He looked around, he said, "We ain't prayed yet." And that's something that makes you feel good. Cordell, do you want to say something? Okay. That is what I want to do next quarter is kind of work on evangelism. When I do the next sermon I do will be on evangelism. And I did, like I say, I've got a bad habit of watching GBN, and I like to listen to Don Blackwell talk. And just asking GPN used to be Truth on Wheels, but he gets some of the craziest questions I've ever seen. There was one a young boy sent it to him, and he said on our way home from church today, there was a woman standing beside the road that says, with a sign that says Jesus is an immigrant. And they said, "Is that true?" Well, no, he didn't. They didn't move from one city to another, but they're still under Roman rule. So no, he didn't cross any borders. But I thought that's funny. A small child would say Jesus was Jesus an immigrant, and that stuck with him when he seen that sign. I've also seen one that a commentary somewhere that said that if a preacher baptized somebody and had a sin in his life that only him and the Lord know, was that baptism for true, or do you have to be rebaptized? And to me, no, you don't have to be rebaptized, because you was baptized within your heart and your eye and your mind while you was baptized. But the one that they used as an example, which he said, you know, said it wasn't scriptural anyway, was a congregation or a group had a minister that had baptized for 20 years, baptized people for 20 years. They come back and said that every one of the people he had baptized had to be rebaptized. Now, how do you do that if in 20 years you know them, some of them's died? What's going to happen to them then? And you never know. There's questions that you don't know the answer to, and then there's questions that you look around and say, what? You know. But anyway, I appreciate y'all putting up with me, not throwing nothing at me and all that. And if you got any questions about, or you want to straighten me out, please do, because I need all the straightening out I can get. So I appreciate it, and let's have a prayer to close out. Would you do a prayer for us?